In this presentation, I'm going to talk about natural law theory, which is a very ancient view of morality, and it still has many people who support it today. Let's start off with an overview and some of the basic issues, and then we'll get into some of the details. The main guy behind natural law ethics is Thomas Aquinas, and he was in the 13th century, and he was a major figure in the Christian church and is still taken very seriously as a philosopher today. The basic idea that he wanted to promote is that nature is rational, and there are universal laws of morality which can be justified. So he's certainly making an assumption that God created the universe and God created a rational universe, which all it's not just random, but rather it's a well-designed, well-crafted universe, and there are natural ways of living. So whenever you talk about natural, there's a question about, well, what does that mean? And exactly what counts as natural is widely debated. These days, when you say something's natural, we tend to think of evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology to have kind of ideas of what certain natural tendencies that we have. There's the idea that we need to behave in certain ways to survive, and that we've evolved those tendencies and those abilities over millions of years. Now, obviously, one big worry about this sort of view is that there are forms of human behavior which help us survive, which we would definitely regard as immoral, such as violence, and especially kind of mass rape and murder of rival groups. We definitely say that's immoral, and yet in some sense we might say it is behavior which has evolved over years. So there's a kind of big question about the link between what's natural and what's good. And many philosophers have argued against uh, saying that what's natural is what's good, because they say that they're two different things. What's natural is like the nature of the kind of universe, and what's good is about morality. What's natural is about facts, and morality is about values. Uh, Sometimes people relate this to the what's called the is-ought fallacy, uh, and the is-ought fallacy, which is especially highlighted by David Hume, says that there are kind of various facts about the world, but the way the world is doesn't tell us about the way we should behave. They're two different things. And so it's said that it's a kind of logical fallacy to move from something being natural to something being good. And this is termed the naturalistic fallacy. The tradition behind natural law basically tries to address that naturalistic fallacy, or go beyond it, uh, even before the objection was formulated. Uh, the basic idea in the natural law tradition is that morality is kind of hardwired into the nature of the universe. The idea is there are objective moral principles that structure the world. And they also believe that these objective moral principles are discoverable by human reason. And a major part of the natural law tradition is that the written law, the law made by humans, should be based on the natural law that is the objective moral law. And any human law which does not fit natural law should not really count as law at all, and we should not obey it. So the idea of natural law has been especially important in revolutionary movements, where they say the law of the dictators is something that should not be obeyed, and people should obey the natural law. And it was also an idea that was brought into international law, and after the Second World War, when Nazis were being prosecuted, even if they were not violating German law, it was said that they were violating natural law, and they were convicted on that basis. The basic idea of natural law is that it applies to all people at all times. So in that sense, then it's democratic. It doesn't say some people are not subject to the law. Rather, it says everyone is subject to the law. So there's a kind of idea of equality in there. And there's this idea that humans, through their intellectual power, can understand this natural law. It's all what we might think of as teleological. The idea is that the world has values bound into it, that human nature and the nature of the world has a certain purpose, and that following that purpose is what's natural. And going against that purpose is unnatural and therefore wrong. This sort of idea is a very long-standing view, that there's a certain way the world is meant to be. We definitely find it in Aristotle, who thinks that humans have a natural purpose. And Aristotle said our natural nature is rational, and so it's good to follow our rational nature. The Stoics talked about the idea of logos, and so they built on ideas that you find in Aristotle. They think that the whole universe is a rational, ordered whole, that the universe is not random, but rather, in some ways, they think the whole universe is rational in itself, and there are even some ideas that it's conscious. So they argue that living ethically is living according to universal reason, the kind of rationality inherent in the whole universe. One Stoic, Cicero, says that true law is right reason in agreement with nature. It's of universal application, unchanging and everlasting. So Cicero argued that if a law contradicts natural law, then it's just not law at all. So as I kind of mentioned, it's a foundation for kind of civil disobedience, as well as being a foundation for prosecuting people who go against what we say is objectively wrong. As I've mentioned, certainly with Aquinas, the idea of natural law is very closely associated with his theological beliefs in God and the idea that God created the universe. And we'll look at that in a little more detail in a little bit. But it is worth being aware that other philosophers have a view of natural law which they do not tie to particular religion or particular theological beliefs. One notable philosopher was Hugo Grotius, who argued that natural law is independent of God. And he argued that natural law could establish rules for war and diplomacy between nations. So he was very interested in the idea of international law. While each nation may have its own written laws, he wanted to address the idea of the law that should govern the interactions between nations. And John Locke, who was famously a big influence on the foundation of the American Constitution, argued that we can talk about natural law independently of any particular religion, and he focused on the idea of natural rights and fundamental rights of life, liberty, and property. Let's go back to Aquinas. Uh, so Aquinas defined natural law as the rational creature's participation in the eternal law. So he thinks that humans are rational, and as rational creatures, we are able to understand the eternal laws of God. And he thinks that God created the universe with this eternal law in it. He says humans are the only earthly creatures that can understand and freely choose to align with that order. So humans are different from other creatures. So morality is discovered as part of the universe. And as humans, when we discover morality, that allows us to flourish. So Aristotle is definitely in Aquinas' mind. And Aquinas not only believes in natural law, but he believes in virtue ethics. But for our purposes here, we're focusing on the idea of natural law as a foundation of morality. So Aquinas identifies 4 levels of law. We just talked about the eternal law, which is kind of in the mind of God, the rational order of the entire universe. Then there's divine law, which is the truths found in Scripture, such as the Ten Commandments. Then there's natural law, which is that part of the eternal law which human reason can discover. And finally, there's human law, which is the law that humans create through legislature and other processes. And fundamentally, from Aquinas' point of view, it's natural law which is most important as our guide to how to behave. And certainly if there's any human law which goes against natural law, then he says that that human law is not morally binding. So Aquinas' view is not that we should just do whatever God tells us to do. He's not a divine command theorist in any kind of serious sense. Rather, his view is that the world is intrinsically rational and humans are rational, and so we should follow the rationality of the universe, and that our ability to reason is our guide to morality. He divides up speculative reason from practical reason. So speculative reason is about what's true, whereas practical reason is about what should I do. We might think of that as roughly the division between science and morality. But he thinks that it can show us that good is to be done and evil is to be avoided. So he thinks that we've been made to be able to see these moral truths, and our reason allows us to lead moral lives. To give a little bit more detail to his view, he thinks that there are 5 fundamental goods. These can be understood as through the acronym POWER, power, and these are preservation of life, an ordered society, worship of God, education of offspring, and reproduction. So these are the 5 fundamental goals that all humans should recognize as good. This is what's built into the nature of the universe. He also thinks that there are secondary precepts. So we have the kind of primary ones, which we just talked about, but then we can get secondary ones through kind of working out how the primary ones apply to regular life. So you might say, well, don't drive when drunk. That can be derived from the primary precept of preserving life. So we've seen that this list of fundamental goods that humans should seek, and the universalist idea that moral truths are the same for all people. And so now we have a pretty good idea of what the fundamental idea of natural law ethics is. So Aristotle's view is very different from divine command theory, because he's saying that the world is intrinsically kind of structured and rational, and we are intrinsically structured and rational to follow the nature of the world. So although there may be lists of commands that we see in our religious texts, the basic idea is that we are being rational when we follow morality and moral rules. So he's very much focusing on human rational nature. As I mentioned, Aquinas does believe in virtues, and he identifies 4 cardinal virtues, which can be given by the names prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. And then he believed in 3 theological virtues: faith, hope, and love. Although, as we'll see, those also come under other names. So this view about the idea that there's an intrinsic kind of purpose to the world, and the world is intrinsically rational, is known as a teleological view. And in some ways it goes very much against a modern scientific view of the world. So a modern scientific view of the world says there are the laws of science, and we cannot discover through any scientific means laws of morality. The natural law view says that morality is, as I mentioned, kind of hardwired into the universe. And so it doesn't really make any distinction between kind of facts and values. It says values are facts. They are part of the universe. And this means that as we develop virtues, it allows us to achieve the fundamental goods of the universe. So something like living in an ordered society, that's a good, and the virtue of justice is a character trait which helps us to achieve that fundamental good. So Aquinas thinks that natural law is discoverable by us through our ability to have practical reason, and we also have to have the right virtues in order to be able to act well in real life. So the virtue of prudence enables us to do that. Prudence takes the universal principles of natural law, like be just, and figures out how to apply them in specific messy moments. So we need that sort of virtue in order to be able to go from natural law to actually behaving well. So we talked about the cardinal virtues and the theological virtues, and they are both necessary in Aquinas's approach. He thinks that there's both the kind of natural world and the supernatural world, and the theological virtues make us godlike. They help us participate in the divine. For our purposes, we're much more interested in the cardinal virtues, because they're the regular morality. Those people who are interested in the supernatural and the ideas of theology are going to be more interested in the theological virtues. I've explained that Aquinas was very big in the Roman Catholic Church, and it tends to be that those people who defend natural law ethics, certainly these days, tend to be associated with the Roman Catholic Church. Now that may be just a coincidence, but it does raise the question about why would one particular religion be especially attracted to natural law. And as we've seen, other people have argued that you don't have to be religious in order to believe in natural law. You can believe that somehow the universe just has objective good in it, independently of any supernatural beliefs about a god or gods. All right. So how does this kind of all start playing out? We've seen that there are these fundamental goods: life, procreation, knowledge, society, reasonable conduct. Well, does that, if those are the fundamental goods, Aquinas is saying that that's going to tell us how to live. It seems pretty sparse. You might think, well, there's all sorts of parts of life which are not really well governed by that. If you're trying to run a business, are those fundamental goods really going to help us? And that's an important question to be thinking about. This idea of there's a fundamental value to life is something that most ethical theories agree on. Uh, if you look at utilitarianism, it says that pleasure is good, and obviously life, you need to be alive in order to experience pleasure. So it seems like life is good because it leads to pleasure. Uh, Kant's approach, which I call the dignity view, says that human life is valuable because it's a source of rationality. And in some ways, we might find strong links between Kant's view and natural law ethics. But to a large extent, natural law ethics seems to say that human life is valuable for itself. It's kind of close to the idea that human life is sacred. Exactly what sacred means is not actually very easy to spell out. It seems to be a particularly kind of religious view. It's hard to imagine somebody who doesn't believe in a religion saying that life is sacred. Uh, so it makes us kind of wonder then what exactly do we mean by saying life is good just for itself, independently of experience or independently of rationality. One thing that's kind of seems that natural law ethics is spelling out fundamental goods, and it's just coming up with a list. Uh, Striking to note that on Aquinas's list, he doesn't include pleasure. Maybe he has some way to fit pleasure in, but he doesn't think pleasure is fundamentally good or naturally good, which we might find a little surprising. We tend to have a kind of a sort of a utilitarian intuition that pleasure isn't just intrinsically good, and Aquinas' view doesn't really fit very well with that. So we've seen that he has this idea of goods being natural. Uh, exactly how we can understand that without a assumption about God and uh, supernatural beings is all a little bit unclear. Now, Aquinas comes up with one list of fundamental goods, uh, but we'll be thinking about other ways to think about fundamental goods. Uh, and in particular, we're going to just spend a little time talking about new natural law theorists. So, in the last, I guess, 30 or 40 years, natural law ethics has been revived by a number of philosophers who argue that it's a plausible view. I think to a large extent, ethics had said, well, Aquinas is so tied up with religious views and assumptions about the nature of God. Now, the whole idea of God is more like an optional idea that some religious people have. So it's none of we shouldn't take it seriously. The new natural law theorists kind of revived natural law and tried to make it independent of any particular religious belief. So here's a list of uh, recent natural law theorists: Grisey, Finnis, Chappell, Murphy, Gomez Lobo, and Crow. And they all come up with different lists about the fundamental goods. They basically agree with Aquinas, or they may take out the idea of worshipping God as a fundamental good, but they add other ideas. So Germain Grise has ideas of self-integration, authenticity, friendship, knowledge of truth, appreciation of beauty, and playful activities. John Finnis talks about the marital good as a fundamental good. Chappell has ideas of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. So he brings in a sort of a utilitarian element to his list of fundamental goods. He adds physical and mental health and harmony, and he says people are a fundamental good, and fairness and achievements. Murphy has ideas of excellence in work and play, and excellence in agency and inner peace. So that's rather different from ideas about pleasure and pain. And he adds friendship and community and happiness as being a fundamental good. Gomez Lobo emphasizes ideas of experience of beauty and theoretical knowledge and integrity. And Crow has a kind of fairly simple list. He includes the idea of appreciation and understanding and meaning. So given all these different theorists have all these different lists, you sort of wonder, well, how do you come up with a list? What's the right answer? And it seems somewhat arbitrary whatever list people come up with. It seems to be, so while they're claiming that it's all rational, it certainly seems somewhat subjective. Now, certainly it seems like if you look at all those goals, they all seem pretty good. Don't want to go against them. It's hard to come up with a great list. We might say, well, if all of those things sound pretty good and sound especially good from a Western European view, and it's plausible that they've held for a long time. It seems like maybe we could go over 1,000 years and say, oh yeah, lots of us have agreed on that sort of thing. But we might say, well, still is it sort of based in Western culture? Do all cultures promote those goods, or do other cultures promote other goods? Natural law ethics says that it's universal, but what sort of guarantee do we have that it's actually universal rather than just a reflection of what a bunch of theorists in the West think? So it really raises the question, what reasons do we have to endorse any particular list? And how do we resolve disputes between different lists? How do we establish what the right list is? It seems to be a pretty major problem for natural law ethics. And even once you have a list, it seems like it's a very tricky issue going from a list of fundamental goods to working out how to behave. And it seems to open up lots of different possibilities for different interpretations. Aquinas said, well, you just use your practical reason and you'll see what the right answer is. Well, that seems to be an over-optimistic assumption. The idea that we can just have our rational capacity and come up with the right answer, or maybe even worse, that there are experts in rationality who will be able to tell everybody else how to behave, seems like, well, we should be somewhat skeptical of that, and we should maybe look at natural law ethics with a somewhat skeptical view.